Good morning, folks. It's 1:30 a.m. here on the East Coast of the United States on Friday morning, the 14th of November, 2025. I've just spent the last hour after finishing my Night Owls broadcast going through as many messages as I can. There's a trend here. Now, there are truly some unique situations that people find themselves in. I'm talking about the refugee program and some pretty bizarre situations. But there's also a very consistent trend. People complain that they haven't been contacted. They sent a statement of interest in on the 12th of May. No one's contacted them. Or they sent a PRM and no one's contacted them. Or why are people who are just doing it now getting responded to? Invariably, at this stage, remarkably, over 90% of the people who tell me that, within hours, literally, or a day or two after, but mostly within hours after I respond to their email, I get a message back. Oh, yes, we were called. We were just called. They just called us 2 hours ago, or they called us last night, or we've been called since we sent the email. Look, I don't know what to tell folks. I appreciate your stress, but most of you are building your own stress. I have offered advice, and many people simply refuse to follow it. We're desperate. Well, you know what? So are people in Chad. So are people in Darfur. So are people in Uganda who fled from Somalia or from South Sudan. They're no less desperate. And they're living in crap holes without electricity, without roads, without anything. So I'm not trying to say that your situation is important, but your progress is light years faster than anyone else. And most of you are impatient beyond belief. All I can caution you is to do what I've told you. Whether you put a PRM email in, if you put a PRM email in and a statement of interest since 12th May and you've not been contacted, the embassy website says you must do the intake questionnaire. Do it if that's your case. If you've been contacted, all I can advise is patience. And beyond that, once you've submitted those things or done the intake questionnaire, move on with your life. Plan for your life. Continue to live your life. If you don't get approved for the refugee program, you put all your chips in that basket, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. If you waited too long and you wind up at the back of the queue and they reach their quota, you're going to be incredibly disappointed that you're not going. Well, I wanted to go. Well, you need to move on with your life. This was not an option on February 6th. Now it's an option if you meet the criteria and if the people processing you get it done properly. So you must not sit around on pins and needles. I've not heard from a family whom I spend a lot of energy and time helping out. They've just disappeared from my channel because they didn't listen to me. One person quit their job. The rest unpacked up their bags and they went to Pretoria for their interview. And then they sat around there for 3 weeks and ran out of money. And then they blame the U.S. government. Why are you blaming the U.S. government? No one told you to do that. I never told you to do that. Why are you doing people doing things like that? Until you have a plane ticket and a confirmation date of your flight, you shouldn't be doing things like that. You must continue to live your life. What if the program stops suddenly? And you're just going to be pissed off and mad at the shape of the Americans, and it's not the Americans' fault. It's your fault for being foolish. Use good judgment. Honestly. Continue your life. When it happens, it happens. There's nothing you can do to force it before that. I'm getting so many sad stories from people about this, that, and the other, but they're putting themselves in this situation. They're doing it. I'm also shocked at how many people say they have no money, but then they're applying for the program. Did you magically think that the U.S. government was going to fly you to Joburg or to Cape Town or Pretoria? I mean, what were you expecting? We've talked about this for 9 months now. It all started with people moaning about not being able to pay for a passport, which costs $35 US. But I don't have the money. I need a passport. What happened to Unboa Makamplan? Honestly. I know people who worked hard to get that money, to raise whatever money they can to get their passport, while others complain endlessly about it. Those complaints have gone away. We don't hear people complain about that much anymore. But now people are complaining about lodging and places to stay. And I empathize with your situation, but what were you expecting? A fish course? I'm not trying to admonish you or chew you out or talk down to you, but I mean, honestly, I think some people just like, oh, I can go online and apply for this. I get to immigrate. It's not about that. It's about people suffering unjust racial persecution, which I have no doubt that most, if not all, the people that are doing intake questionnaires or did statements of interest fall into that category. But it's not the responsibility of the U.S. government to get you to the place. Remember, most refugees are in a camp somewhere, and the UN processes them. When they go there, they get their interviews, and then the U.S. has people go over and they go through the screening. And they do it all in one place, right where those people live. They're crappy tents in the middle of nowhere in refugee camps full of tens and hundreds of thousands of people. This doesn't help solve the problem for people who don't have accommodation or don't have resources to get there. Now, that's one thing. Now, I have extreme empathy for the people that feel they've been jerked around here. And there have been people jerked around. I've seen it. Come to Pretoria tomorrow. Seriously, I'm in Polokwane. Well, that's actually pretty close. I'm in Uppington. Or PE. That's insane. People drive 17 hours through the night to get there, risking their lives driving at night in South Africa. That's insane. Not by the people doing it, but by the expectation to be there. This is a consequence of three things, in my view. Three things. This is a longer video than I anticipated, but this is important. Those three things are they're rushing to get as many people through the program and process them as possible. Probably, as I said previously back in August, because someone screwed up and dicked around with this program for too long. And then they've got pressure to get it done or they're going to get fired. So, probably a political point to you, who knows. They're rushing. They make mistakes. That's one. Number two, they're using Americans who would come over from states that have no concept of South Africa. They don't know South Africa from South Dakota, from South Miami or South Beach. They don't know it. They don't understand it. And the same with Kenyans. Kenyans live in a small country. Everything's relatively close in Kenya. South Africa's not a small country. So you have ignorance of geography. Well, four things actually. You have four. If I had that in there, okay, they're rushing, ignorance of geography by Americans who've come over to process you, and by Kenyans who are processing you remotely. That's two. Then you have just stupid mistakes by people that aren't that bright. I mean, I've messaged from people saying the Kenyans called me. I took the call. I couldn't hear them. I said I can't hear them, and they just kept talking. They just kept talking. They didn't listen to me, and I don't know where I'm supposed to go. How in the world did they tell you on the phone that you have an appointment on this date and say where it's at, but don't follow up with an email or get confirmation? I don't know what kind of morons do that. I really don't. When I deal with people in Africa that don't speak the same language as I do, I both back brief. All right, I tell them what I expect or what's coming, and then I have them explain to me what they understood. And this was important because I was in Liberia. Americans think Liberians speak English. They don't speak English. They speak a version of English, which is not even remote like American English. And so Americans would tell these soldiers, these recruits, this, that, and the other. And then the recruits wouldn't do it. Not because they're lazy, but because they didn't understand. So I'd have to teach them to back brief. Okay, tell me what you understand. What did I just tell you to do? That's what these people should be doing. Where did I just tell you to go? And then they should send you an email. And the final factor, the fourth factor here is, I don't know who's running this program. But if I was in charge, they would be fired instantly. And I would jack up all these people. I would be in Nairobi jacking up people. Then I'd be back in Pretoria jacking up the Americans who are screwing this up. That doesn't solve your problem. But again, 90% of the people who write to me and say, I haven't heard, they hear back within a short period of time. Patience. Move on with your life. All right? When the call comes, the call comes. But there are people out there with bizarre situations that haven't heard from somebody, and I'm trying to answer as much of that as I can. But folks, that's all I can advise. That's all I can advise you, okay? I don't have a magical crystal ball. These people don't work for me. I don't control them. I don't run the contracts. But I can tell you what I would do if I did, and it wouldn't be pretty. There'd be a lot of people crying in their milk right now. They'd be crying because they would be sacked or jacked up. Because there's too many mistakes happening here. Too many stupid mistakes, and it's putting people out. It's bankrupting people who spend a fortune to get to and from Joburg, back and forth, then down to Cape Town for these appointments that all could be done at the same time. Whoever's scheduling this really needs to be talked to. But I can't do that. I'm not there. So it's a shame that President Trump doesn't know who I am, or the White House hasn't paid attention to my submission for a job in the administration and nominated me for ambassador. Because I wouldn't tolerate this as ambassador. I would sort this out in South Africa. Just like that. All right, folks. Thanks for listening. Hope nobody's feelings were hurt. If they were, put your big boy pants on. All right? Thanks. Hang in there. Cheers.